So it's we're talking about the same Magnum classic flavor, and what is given to us is a demand schedule. It's already given to us right here. At the price of 60, I am willing to buy 5. The price of 80, I'm willing to buy 4. So it's sort of like going like this, and at 60, it would have been at 0 level. That's my original demand curve. Now, let's say if I say the demand has increased versus if I had said quantity demanded has increased. They're two different terminologies. You need to realize how they work. If I had said quantity demanded has increased, that means I'm saying I'm going downward on the curve to the right. So if the price was 120, I was buying 2, and now I'm buying 3, but the price must have fallen. So if I'm moving down to this point or that point or that point, that means there is a movement, and I'll say quantity demanded has increased. However, if I say demand has increased, what that really means is that there is not a movement along the curve. However, there is this that has actually happened. This is different from movement along the curve. This is showing a shift in the demand curve. So, whenever there is a shift in the demand curve, you say the demand has increased, not quantity demanded. So, the demand has increased at every price level. The real question is by how much has it increased? Okay. So to measure by how much this demand curve is increasing. Now remember, in graphs, either you do the reading vertically or you do the reading horizontally. There is no diagonal reading in graphs. Either you're going to see by how much the price has increased or by how much the quantity has increased. Y axis पे price है, x axis पे quantity है. So basically, to measure this is what I do. At a price of 100, my original quantity demanded was 3. Now the demand has increased. So at the same price of 100, now people are willing and able to buy 5, which originally it was just 3. Now it's 5. So there has been an increase by 2 units. Now, since I've made a parallel shift at every price level, at 140 I was buying 1. Now at the same price of 140, now I'm willing to buy 3. Again, it shows the same increase by 2. So if I was to give numbers, okay, the demand curve has increased, okay, and it is increased by 2. So first it was 5, so now it must be 7 at that price, and then at a price of 80, I was buying 4. Now I will be buying 6 because there has been an increase in the demand by 2 at each and every price levels. Similarly, even the decrease will be measured like that. For example, let's say my demand curve has shifted like this. I'll call it D2. I'll do the same thing. At the price of 100, originally I was buying 3. Now at the price of 100, for some reason, I am just buying 2. So there has been a decrease by 1 unit. And so my numbers are going to change accordingly. So from the original, when the demand has decreased, it has shifted by 1 numbers on the left. So these would be our numbers. Now, increase is a shift to the right, या up भी कह सकते हो, because if you see, technically it's going to the right or it's going upwards. And decrease is shift to the left or down in this case. Usually we talk in terms of left and right. So for exam purpose, you don't have to work with numbers, numerics, okay? Because that's just going to waste time. You're going to do price, quantity, a simple downward sloping demand curve, call it D0. That's my original. Do a rough marking on it. एक POQO की marking कर लो. And then to show an increase in the demand, just make a parallel shift to the right. Call it D1. Make an arrow. This is important. You make an arrow. Okay. यहाँ मैं लिख देता हूँ increase. However, if it shifts to the left, make it like this. Let's call it D2. Make an arrow. And this is for if it was to decrease. This is how you work with the notations. Movement along the curve is when you are going up and down the same curve. And it happens only because of the change in the price of the good itself, not the price of substitute complements, the good itself. And then you have the shifts in the demand curve. Now, these are non-price factors, some other factors which cause the demand curve to shift. So, one of the factors that causes the demand curve to shift is income of people. When we talk about income, we want to be more specific. Let me say the disposable income of people. Okay, let me introduce this idea right now. Disposable income is the income that you have after paying off your taxes. Okay, whenever I earn an income, of that I have to pay income tax. So, income before the taxes is called gross income, and then I pay taxes on it or insurance on it, and I'm left with disposable income. Disposable income is something which is available to me to buy goods and services. Okay, now if people's disposable income changes, the general idea is an increase in income will increase the demand and shift the demand curve to the right. That's what is likely to happen as an overall scenario. People tend to buy more when they have higher incomes of the goods. But then you have to have a discussion that there are actually three categories of good. One is something called a normal good. One is something called an inferior good. And one is something called the necessities. There are three different types, and income has a different impact on all three of them. So let me explain. If your income goes up and you start buying more of that good, understand these are your normal goods. If income goes down, you will demand less of these goods. Now, it could be like branded clothing or some really expensive luxury based restaurants or something like that, or a really fancy phone like an iPhone or Note in Samsung. Do you understand that? It has a direct relationship with income. Income goes up, you buy more. Income goes down, you can't afford it, you demand less of it. Shifts over the right and to the left. Inferior works in the opposite way. If your income goes up, you move away from that good. And if income goes down, you move towards that good. It tells us like these would be like unbranded stuff, like the cheaper version of the Samsung. Income goes up, you move away from those cheaper version of phones and you move on to the more uh, expensive branded ones. If income goes down, you can't afford them, so you come back to these goods. इसके अंदर it could be those simple chips like Doritos, I would say is the normal one, and then you can have like Slanty or something like that, Lay's as an inferior one because people will move towards Doritos if income goes up. So this is your normal and this is your inferior. On the other hand, necessity, if income goes up, the demand remains the same, just like milk and egg and bread that generally works. If income goes down, the demand remains the same. Now, the thing with this is normal, inferior, and necessity depends from person to person. For example, if I'm a person who goes to work on a cycle, that's what my affordability is. If my income goes up, I will move towards a motorcycle. So for me, the bicycle becomes inferior and the motorcycle becomes a normal good. But for a person who owns a car right now, maybe a Swift, if his income goes up, he might move towards a Toyota Corolla. So for them, Toyota Corolla would be normal and Suzuki will be inferior, and motorcycle and cycle, they will all be inferior. So this is how it works. For a billionaire, maybe even like a car like Mercedes might be an inferior good because they have so much income. So normal, inferior, and necessity really depends on different people's affordability. Another factor which will cause shifts is changes in the price of substitute goods. Okay, now let's try and work it out. If there is increase in the price of substitute good, this will dash the demand for your good and shift the demand curve to the dash. What do you think? So as a result, if so this is what's going to happen. If the price of substitute becomes expensive, why would you buy the substitute good? You will buy more of the other good, the one that you're talking about. So from the diagram point of view, this is what's happening. Let me make two diagrams and show you exactly what you are required. Okay, so what will happen to the demand of Toyota if Honda becomes expensive? Okay, so I'll let me work the two diagrams. I'm just roughly making the two diagrams. This is the demand curve for this is the demand curve for this. These price numbers and quantity numbers are unrelated to these price and quantity numbers. They can have different axes, different numbers. Now what they are really suggesting is, let me give the, at this price, this is the quantity being bought. For this one, at this price, this quantity is being bought. Now, if the price of Honda goes up, this is what I'll do. See this carefully. Honda price goes up. Let me see where the quantity demanded is now. If the price of Honda goes up, the quantity demanded falls. There is a contraction in the sales for Honda. On the other hand, in Toyota market, the prices did not change. These people who are moving away from Honda because it's becoming expensive, they will start buying Toyotas and you would see an increase in the demand for Toyota cars. At the same price, more is being bought. So, what has exactly happened is in Honda's market, when the price went up, quantity demanded went down, and there was a contraction in demand. There was a contraction in demand for Hondas. Whereas in Toyota, the demand went up. Simple, that's it. Not quantity demanded. The demand went up because we have a shift. So you see how I'm using this word quantity demanded and how I'm using this word demand in this scenario. So whenever we're explaining what are substitute goods, you have to come up with a different way of explaining. Substitute goods are interchangeable, yeah, alternate good or something. Then changes in the price of complement goods. Complement goods are not that coffee ke saath sugar you're getting free. Okay, it has nothing to do with free or something. Complement goods, the good term they use for it is jointly demanded goods, or these are goods which are used together. These are goods that are used together, and so jointly demanded is the thing. So for example, it could be like milk and tea, yeah, milk and sugar. All substitutes would be tea and coffee, whereas complements would be sugar and coffee, milk and coffee, tires and cars, stuff like that. So increase in the price of complement goods will decrease the demand for your good and will shift the curve to the left. So let me make a diagram. Again, you can start copying this. Number three is changes in the price of complement goods. So if there is a fall in the price of petrol, let's see what's going to happen in the petrol market. If there is a fall in the price, let's do P1 keep marking below PO in the diagram for petrol. And so if the price of petrol goes down, we're going to see a movement along. That means if price goes down, quantity demanded for petrol is going to go up. And as a result of this, the demand curve is going to shift to the right for the cars. There could be change in the demand because of consumer preference and taste, and it could be about fashion. You know how if there is an increase in demand due to the taste, the demand curve is going to increase and it will shift to the right. For example, people are becoming health conscious nowadays. So they want health based drinks. So the demand for those goods are going to go up, whereas the demand for unhealthy stuff is likely to go down, isn't it? So it depends on the preferences and the taste of the people. Sometimes fashion drives this factor. So your factor number four is changes in the consumer's preferences and taste. Changes in direct taxes. I personally feel this is one of the star points. When we say direct, so let me introduce it for the first time. Direct taxes, we know what taxes are, what the government charges people. But the thing is, the direct one is tax on income and wealth. Okay? So if the government increases this, basically what happens is it changes people's purchasing power. So increase in income tax will decrease the demand and shift the demand curve to the left. It will reduce people's purchasing power and so their ability to buy goods and services. Changes in population. Now, it's simple. You can copy this down, changes in population. If there is an increase in population, the demand's going to go up and it's going to shift to the right. Okay. Now, changes in population is because of birth rate, death rate, and net migration, even. Those people who are coming from abroad to live in our country, or people leaving our country to go abroad. Or, like, for example, we have a deadly epidemic and proportion of your population dies because of that. So, what would you expect? Well, demand's going to go down. Number seven is about not just advertisement, but a successful advertisement. It matters. A successful advertisement will cause the demand for the goods to increase and shift the demand curve to the right. That's why all day we have all these famous celebrities telling us to consume certain goods. And if it's a good one and the consumer believes, then the demand will go up. Even factor like expected future price has an effect. Expected future prices, what's going to happen to the prices in the future? Well, if you're expecting that the price of the good is going to rise in the future, and the good that you want to buy can be stored for long duration or can be used for a long duration, people will buy those goods now and increase the demand, and the demand curve will shift outwards. For example, if I hear that in future the cars are going to become expensive after a month or two, what would I do? I would personally prefer to buy the cars right now. Okay. So it increases the demand for the good.